Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking installment of the Map Round Show. This is the Built in California series, and with me on the line is the CEO of Acutus Medical, David Roman. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Matt, and thanks for having us on.
The privilege is really all mine, mate. So you've done some legit incredible things since you took over as CEO, well, first CFO and now CEO of Acutus Medical. And so there's lots to get into. But for our viewers around the world, David, if you would be so kind, just why don't you give us a bit about your background and, hit us up with the elevator pitch around Acutus Medical and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, sure. I'm excited to share the Acutus story with everybody today because it's been a journey really to transform our space. But I'll give you a little bit of my background. So I have spent my entire professional career around the medical device industry. Never thought I would end up here. I was a terrible science student in high school, terrible science student in college. But when I began my first job on Wall Street, I got assigned to work with medical device companies and had the choice to take that role or find another place of employment. And it felt like at age 22, my first job in an apartment lease in New York City, I should probably take the job. So I jumped into it and really fell in love with the space. And I spent 12 years advising medical device companies before I decided to jump off the sidelines and move onto the playing field. Joined a large multinational company in Chicago called Baxter International, huge medical device conglomerate firm. Was there for 5 years and then really got bitten by the startup bug and wanted to move into an early stage company that was building something from the ground up. And I joined Acutus in March of 2021, moved my family from the cold, brisk winters of Chicago to Southern California and settled here with my wife and two young daughters. And not only are we enjoying Southern California lifestyle, but having a ton of fun here at Acutus as well.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like I said, there's lots to get into here. I mean, like because one of the things that really struck me about your story was just how bad things were. And through grit and grind and just basically intelligence, and making tough decisions, you've turned Acutus around. That's really the big story here. But before we get into the meat and the potatoes on exactly what you had to do, what is Acutus Medical trying to solve for the world? What's the problem that you
Yeah.
guys are tackling?
So the company was founded in 2011 by a group of very enterprising scientists, obviously, which does not include me. And the whole premise of our technology is to treat patients suffering from debilitating cardiac arrhythmias. And you hear people say, "I feel like my heart skipped a beat," or "I had this fainting feeling," or "I'm short of breath." Very commonly, there's something called the 6-minute walk test, which sounds mundane, but if you have cardiovascular disease, walking 6 minutes continuously is actually quite hard. And this is and because the heart is an electrical organ, it's actually not as well understood as everyone would like to think it is. People think about cardiovascular disease, and you think high cholesterol, you think heart attack. That is like the tip of the spear when it comes to understanding everything that happens with inside this critical complex organ. And because of that, there is for better, for worse for society, good for innovators and entrepreneurs, a lot of unmet need in this space. So the whole area where we compete in arrhythmias, and just to put this in context for you, your viewers, about 50 million people around the world suffer from some type of an arrhythmia, and
Mm.
diagnostic rates are going up. If you own an Apple Watch and you bought the latest Apple Watch, there is an application on there that can track your EKG and will tell you if you have atrial, you're at risk of developing atrial fibrillation. Western lifestyle, as that gets exported around the world, continues to drive growth in heart disease, and arrhythmia is certainly one of the byproducts of that. But despite the fact that there are 50 million people with this disease around the world, only about 1 million get treated a year with device therapy. So there's a huge unmet need from an underpenetration perspective. And part of that is diagnostic related, that some people don't know they have the disease, which is why consumer-based devices like the Apple Watch really help drive people into the physician's office and then ultimately get diagnosed. The other piece of it is the technology that exists today while significantly more advanced than it was 20 or 30 years ago, still has a lot of room for improvement. And if you look at most area, the sort of standard of care in treating those 1 million patients today produces outcomes that almost at a very high probability mean you're in 1 in 2 patients is going to come back to the doctor after a year of treatment. So you as a patient, you're signing up for an elective surgical procedure, you're going into a hospital, you're being treated with the knowledge that there's a 1 in 2 shot you're going to end up back on that table in 12 months. And our whole company was founded around the premise that that is not an acceptable outcome, especially when that is the outcome deemed for the technology that today is standard of care. And while some of that is, I would say is getting better, to us, 50 to 55% success is not better. We want results that are 70, 80% success in this technology. And that was the whole premise of this company, was finding a way to really diagnose patients differentially, which would then inform a personalized treatment.
Mm. So I had this conversation around arrhythmia and how the problem's actually getting bigger. Like, if you know the idea of like all boats rise with a rising tide, and to your point around diet, COVID, and this problem is sort of going up on a bell curve. And I'm curious to understand, like, why is it that so few people are actually being treated? Because you would imagine, with all the technology that we have at our disposal today, and because it's like, there's tens of millions of people that suffer from stuff of this problem every year. So why is there such a shortfall in treatment?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something that we sometimes struggle to understand as well, because it seems obvious to us that if you have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, or even if you're an active 40-year-old and you're cycling and all of a sudden you kind of you black out and you lose consciousness, that very well could be the sign of arrhythmia too. If you have an experience like that, it would seem logical that you would go to your doctor. But first of all, a lot of people defer treatment for whatever reason. Sometimes that can be economic. Sometimes that can be, I'm too busy to go to the doctor, and let's just see how I feel tomorrow, and I feel fine. So you do have cases of the disease that are somewhat intermittent. And for those patients, can you live with it? Yes. What people don't fully appreciate is that if you suffer from atrial fibrillation, for example, your risk of stroke goes up significantly. And while you might be able to survive a bout of AFib if you have it once a year, it'll be annoying, but you'll survive. If that gets worse and you progress to a stroke, believe me, what I think we all hear stroke and everyone freaks out, and rightfully so, because the downstream implications of not treating the disease become much more significant, particularly as you age. And this is a progressive disease. Remember, the heart's a muscle. So think about working out any other muscle. If you don't work it, what happens? It atrophies. As it atrophies, your function gets worse. You try to use any muscle that has atrophied in the same capacity you did before atrophy, it doesn't function as well, right? So think about the heart the same exact way. And when you have an arrhythmia, these electrical impulses put a lot of stress on your heart. And the misfiring, of these electrical impulses put a lot of stress on your heart. So there's every good reason that people should be treated. The challenge is, as you point out, some of it is diagnostic rates are low because the tools haven't really existed for patients to be diagnosed until things get really bad. And then you show up at an emergency room or some other place. The second is that the way we treat patients today is either through drug therapy, which there hasn't been any innovation really in arrhythmia management from a drug therapy perspective. And those drugs that are out there have really nasty side effects and are tough to tolerate. And then on the medical device side, it's really been a one-size-fits-all treatment. So whether if you and I have an arrhythmia, it's very likely that you and I will get treated the exact same way, even though we probably have different underlying demographic and genetic characteristics, as well as the way the disease presents itself. So you've had people kind of shy away from getting treated in that this one-size-fits-all approach with a 50% success rate. Do I roll the dice? Do I sort of see what happens? Do I wait and see? So I think there's a lot of room for the technology to get better as well. That should increase the treatment rates.
Sure, that's quite a thing. So how big is this market? would you suggest in billions that you're trying to? What's the opportunity
Yes.
here?
So today the market is about $6 billion globally, growing at a 10 to 15% annual rate, and that's been at a very consistent glide path the past several years. There was some disruption because of COVID-19 and cancellation of elective procedures and government restrictions around hospital access. But we've seen a pretty significant recovery where right now procedure volumes are in excess of where they were pre-COVID, and that underlying growth is largely volume, not price, because there's just this sort of steady stream of patients out there who need to be treated. At the same time, this is an industry that has a rapid amount of new entrants. We're not the only company who sees this challenge, so you have a decent amount of innovation and a number of new products coming to market that help stimulate growth as well. Now, for us specifically, that $6 billion market really breaks into two components that are roughly of equal size, and you have what we would describe as sort of the simple run-of-the-mill ablation or arrhythmia management patients that are maybe younger, healthier, but have some sort of cardiac condition. That's not really the part of the market that we're going after, but there's a whole other part of the market, which is about half of it, that is sicker, severe disease, prior failed procedure, et cetera. And that's really our sweet spot. We're going after the patients who we know won't benefit from this one size fits all approach, and where there are not a lot of acceptable or attractive solutions out there.
So, what have you guys built, or what are you in the process of building? I know you've got quite a few interesting innovations to share with everyone.
Yeah, so our core system is called a mapping system. And basically what a mapping system does is it helps a physician build a 3D model of the heart. So patients on a table, a physician will take a catheter, go into the patient through the femoral artery, which is around the groin. It's a very common access point for non-invasive procedures. This is actually a non-invasive procedure, which I'll explain in a second. They take the catheter, they go into the heart, and our catheter is like a globe that's coated with ultrasound sensors all over it. So our catheter has 48 ultrasound transducers on it. Each one is about the size of a grain of sand. We actually build this by hand here in California. So these are very high fidelity products. And then what a physician will do is they'll rove the catheter around the inside of the heart wall. Those ultrasound transducers will be taking basically pictures. We collect 1 million data points a second. Those data points then get translated through our software and algorithm into a map. So if you think about it as it's like a really swanky GPS system. So it's like you compare Waze to MapQuest would be the best way that I would kind of summarize it for people. So what we do with this map is we say to a physician, okay, based on what we've captured in imaging and based on the electrical activity in the heart from the imaging, we see a need to treat here. So we will get it as a high precision guidance system that it tells the physician where they have to go treat. And the treatment is then conducted with another catheter that goes into the heart. You find where the electrical conduction is screwed up, and you take a catheter that has an energy tip at the end, and you burn those points with radio frequency energy, and that is believed to terminate the electrical misconduction. So that's the idea behind it. Where ours is really different is that the imaging piece of it. What other companies do is you have to create that picture of the heart through basically paint by number. So you'll take a catheter and you'll poke it around the inside of the heart wall to create a map. And not that doesn't work; it works fine, but you just have a different level of fidelity when you're collecting all those data points by ultrasound.
So what you've then created is essentially the Google Maps or the Waze of the heart.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And what's going to be really important for us in the future, and we have this product on the market in Europe, and it will come to the market in the U.S., and I like the GPS example because it really is a good one. That we right now in the United States offer a really high-end GPS system, but no car. So I don't know if you remember like those Garmin things that used to be about the size of like an old BlackBerry, and people would carry around. And you'd stick them on your dashboard in a car before GPS systems got integrated into a car. Then as soon as GPS systems became a feature within most automobiles, the Garmin device didn't need it anymore, because it didn't really it told you where to go, but it didn't help get you there. Now you had a system that could both tell you where to go and get you there. And this is sort of like, you think about like Tesla and autonomous driving and things like that. Same thing for us. If we get it, you can mix and match our product with other technologies on the market. They're just not meant for that. It's like, if you think about it's not, you would never take the transmission out of a Tesla and stick it in a BMW and assume that it's going to work as well. So it's the same principle for us here. Is that so in Europe, where the regulatory hurdles are a little bit different, we have that we call it an ablation catheter or a therapy tool. In this example, it's the car that's approved and doing well in Europe. We should get approval for that product here in the United States next year, and that'll make a very significant difference in the value proposition that we're offering.
Mm-hmm. So just on that, and we will get to the business turnaround conversation in a moment. I'm curious though, how does the FDA approval differ when you're trying to approve something in the US versus say Europe? Is it the same thing, just slightly different, or is it totally different with longer cycles?
The US approval cycles tend to be longer. The FDA has, it's hard for me to say more stringent. I don't want to diminish at all the significant hurdles that are required to get approval in Europe. But the FDA does require a different set of clinical trials. So we did have to run a 110 patient clinical study. It took us, we started enrolling it during COVID, which was not the best time for an undertaking like that, but we had to keep moving forward. So it took us about a little over a year to enroll the study. We just completed follow-up of the patients. We'll publish the data in February of next year, and the data are really good, but we'll publish them in early February at a medical meeting. And we submitted our application to the FDA in October of this past year. And then they have it's a 180-day review clock from the time the application is submitted. So that's why we expect to have approval in the first half of next year.
Fantastic. So you guys, you mentioned to me that you've treated over 5,000 patients since launch, which is not a small amount of patients. And then you've got 2 clinical trials underway with some incredible results. I'd love for you just to share what some of those results are revealing.
Yeah, so you're right. We've treated over 5,000 patients. I think we'll get to 6,000 by the end of this year, based on how things are going this quarter. And I'd really like to see us at 9,000 to 10,000 by the end of next year. And it's been a pretty steady trajectory, even though we launched this product in the end of 2019, headed into 2020, and we all know what kind of transpired then. So, but there are really 2 key studies that I would say corroborate our differentiation. So there was the first study that was run to kind of get approval for our system was called the Uncover AF study, and in that study we enrolled 127 patients. And of those patients who enrolled, we showed 72.5% success at 1 year. Remember, I said your standard of care is 50%. So in our first study with a very first generation product, we showed 72.5%. Then there was a group of physicians who decided, well, let's go see if we can replicate this in a real world setting, because clinical studies are very well controlled. The question is, what happens when the rubber meets the road in the clinic? So we had a group of physicians who decided, let's go check this thing out on our own. This is not company sponsored at all. And they showed an 87.5% success rate at 2 years. So pretty extraordinary when put in the hands of well-trained, well-experienced physicians who kind of took the time to get over the learning curve and utilize the product. And we're continuing to invest in clinical studies. And I would say this is going to be a very big feature of us in 2023 and beyond, is we have not, we sort of, as we've kind of gone through a strategic reset, we've pulled back a little bit on that investment in clinical research, and we will hit the accelerator as we go into next year.
Well, congratulations, dude. I think that's remarkable. Cool. So let's get into your journey here. So I touched on this earlier, but you were initially CFO in March 21, and then you became the kind of permanent CEO in July. What was actually going on when you took over the company? Walk us through what the state of affairs actually was.
Yeah, we have had a challenging couple years here, and certainly some of that has been driven by the external environment around COVID-19, staffing shortages at hospitals, and many of the things that people hear about, unfortunately, on a relatively routine basis. But from a company it would be disingenuous to say that all of our challenges were related to the outside environment, because we as a company launched with some very ambitious and aggressive growth targets. And as we started to move through our early commercialization, we weren't achieving those growth objectives. While all the while hiring significantly. I mean, we hired probably 100 people in 2021 or something like that. So we had a company exiting last year, 2021, with 340 people and $17 million of revenue and an annual cash burn rate of over $100 million. And what became and as the market environment started to become more challenging from a capital standpoint, it became very clear that we were going to have to look at this business very differently. And our team is pretty savvy. They started to see the writing on the wall. We started to see attrition pick up. It was very clear that we didn't have the right strategy because, as I've kind of described earlier in this discussion, we have a really targeted segment of the market that we're going after. When we first came out, we were trying to be all things to all people. We made a lot of statements to our customers about things we could do that, quite frankly, the technology wasn't ready for. So we had a reputation challenge with our customers. We had a morale problem with people internally, and we had a strategy and capital structure that was, quite frankly, broken. And if I had to sum up one of our biggest challenges that I think was the key underlying driver there, it's that very painful, I got to look myself in the mirror and see what I actually see. And we all know the first step to fixing a problem is identifying you have one. And there was just a tremendous hesitancy from prior management to be willing to do that. And every day that went by was a day lost because we're burning cash. And we're sort of in I hate to use the word death spiral, but that's sort of what it felt like. And the metric that I use that I think is probably the most important one to reflect the health of the company is what is our voluntary attrition, because people vote with their feet. And and think about that. 11% of the company walked out the door in a 3-month period of time, and 8% of the company walked out the door in June. That is an unsustainable way of operating, but a complete reflection of where we were as a company. So I think that our teams saw what was going on and they voted with their feet. So that's over the past, that was so taking that all together, what we had to ask ourselves when I took over the company was, why are we where we are, in a very honest way? What is it going to take to turn us around, and how do we keep people incentivized and motivated to be part of that redirection of the organization? All the while, time is not our friend, and that forced us to work with our board to go pretty judiciously and aggressively at asking ourselves these tough questions and moving quickly.
Cool. Well, I'm curious about how you make difficult decisions to make those sorts of outcomes possible, because, the bigger the ship, the harder it is to turn. If you're like a one-man band, you can change everything today. But when you got 340 people, employee turnover at 11%, now 1%, you're now 225 people, you've reduced cash burn by 40%, you have a new investor group. Like, these are some pretty big decisions, and you haven't exactly been, at the helm of the ship for 5-7 years, you know what I'm saying, where you kind of were, like you have that tenure to leverage. So walk us through like how you made decisions, like what factored into those sorts of outcomes.
The first thing I did was sort of dive back into my own experience. And I had an English teacher say to me once, there are no new plots, just new actors. And it is a really helpful thing to remember is that we're not the first company that's gone through challenges. We're not the first company that's had difficulty figuring out product market fit, nor were we the first company that's had to execute a turnaround. So I went very deep into my kind of past experience to find analogs. Who else has done this well? What can I emulate from them? The second was I very quickly made changes to my leadership team, and we've turned over for every functional lead except for R&D, because that's really the innovative hallmark of the company is that team, that leadership team. But really trying to figure out who's going to have the right attitude here to come at this with an open mind, and that this sort of the thing I hate more than anything else in situations like this, we tried this before and it didn't work, or that won't work here, or things here are different, or you don't get it. That thing that worked at 10 other places can't work here. So really it was about shifting the mentality to saying, we got to look at this with a blank slate, and drawing on those past experiences. That was the first thing. The second was very quickly turning outside the company. The biggest investment we've made this year is in external market research and market validation to truly understand where does our product fit, why have we not experienced the ramp that we had initially expected, and what will it take to unlock that opportunity. So we use that to very quickly look at all of our R&D investments and our pipeline priorities and completely resequence it to where we think what is going to be critical to driving accelerated adoption of our product portfolio. And then the third was not to delay when it came to designing a retention program. And that is the most important thing that we've done here is, we've now had September, October, November, and I think it'll be the same in December, of record low voluntary turnover, and ensuring that we have a great team in place. And that, someone asked me the other day, what worries you most? And I said, it's not can we raise capital, it's not can we get this product right, it is keeping this team together, because that's the one that also gives me great confidence every day, is the quality of the people in the company, but also gives me great trepidation in that I know I have to retain this group, because they are the key to ultimately turning the business around. And the last thing I'll say is it's very easy to get stuck in analysis paralysis of I need to see more information, but I think there's also a degree where you have to trust your gut, and you have to be willing to take risk, and obviously not unbridled risk. You want to take calculated risk, but I had a team that was willing to take a giant step forward together and implement the changes that we needed to. And this was not a me decision alone. It's been really important to me to run a collaborative organization and get input from my peers. But I was very fortunate that my leadership team was ready to jump head on and get on the same page. And once we got on the same page, really move swiftly.
Well, dude, congratulations, man. That's quite a thing, what you've achieved. So, seriously, I said this to you when when you first told me, like, it's a real thing to be proud of. I think in terms of, like, because I think it's probably the hardest thing. They're starting a business where you don't have anything, and then there is a business which isn't on the right journey, and then you have to turn it all around with all those people, and it's a lot of responsibility. And you guys are listed on the NASDAQ. Share prices are a thing, public markets are a thing. They're also looking at what you're doing, and ultimately everyone's looking to you to make the tough calls. So you've achieved a hell of a lot. Does it feel like that?
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day as we get close to the end of the year. Kind of, we're going to do a kind of end of year company event, and I want to have the opportunity to kind of recap what we've been through. And as I was thinking about that, it's starting to feel that way, because there are some days that are just you got really high highs and really low lows, and yes, being publicly traded at our stage in development is tough, and it's hard not to look at the stock price sometimes as validation or not. But if I just kind of recap 2022 and think about our future, I think our team should feel really good about what we've done here. Right? We sold the business as a product line to Medtronic to help capitalize the company for the next several years. We revamped our strategy completely. We've reorganized, we restructured leadership. We have a new CEO and CFO. We have a new person leading every single function, as I said before, except for R&D. We have reduced headcount by a third. We've cut our cash burn in half. We've strengthened our operating foundation, and through all of this, we have still been able to grow our procedure volumes over 20% year to date, and achieve all of our product submission deadlines and objectives, and really do everything we can to set us up for a strong future. And I'm obviously very biased in saying this, but I don't know a lot of organizations that would go through that amount of change in a 9-month period of time and not only survive, but walk out of it in a position where they're ready to thrive.
Yeah, I think something, when you see the other side, because I think you're kind of like still coming out the tunnel, but when you come out that tunnel and you start to see like exactly where the things are going, you start to secure like the opportunities that the decisions you've made are going to realize. I think it's going to like really, from a reputational perspective, like there's not many people that can say that's what you did and with the outcome. I certainly can't say that. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's a team effort, and I think it would just be a huge sort of morale boost to our leadership team and the whole company, quite frankly, as we start to, as you put it, get on the other side of this. And but we are like at the peak of the sort of workload right now. So it's like, just need to get over this hill. And I was having this conversation with one of my coworkers on Monday afternoon, and he was like, "We're just so close," and that's how I feel. And I'd love to be able to celebrate that as we kind of exit this year and start next year on a good, positive glide path.
Yeah, it is. And it is, you're right, it is a team effort. So I'm curious to, obviously doing something like this, just building any business, you make mistakes along the way and that kind of thing. And I'm sure there's been mistakes that you've made as a team, and you could, as yourself, maybe made the wrong decision at some point. So I'm curious to ask you this, David, like what's your biggest failure, quote unquote, on this journey, and what did you learn from it?
Well, there are no failures, of course, Matt. But
oh yeah. I mean, you went straight to hero.
No. I would say the biggest thing that I've there are really two things that I would say have been major learnings for me. And one is you have to ask for help. There is no. It seems like you're supposed to have all the answers when you're in a leadership role, and asking for help. Some people are going to look at you, and you always worry. Well, does this guy know what he's doing? And that is just really important. Like, and our board has been great. I mean, they keep say, how can we help? What can we do? Can we form a committee on this topic or that topic? And they've been incredibly engaged and supportive. But there's always that, like, I don't know, do I ask for help? Do I not ask for help? But my biggest thing is like, speak up. And I say, and it's sort of one of those terrible things of do as I say, not as I do. Because I tell my team, I'm like, if you need help with something, we need to be super communicative, and then I got to make sure I practice that too. Yeah. And I wouldn't say I've been like 100% great about that for sure. The second is in other jobs I've had, I've been able to get away with brute force to get stuff done, like just work harder. That is impossible in this job. And I have to recognize where my blind spots are and not avoid them. Like, it's very easy to kind of, for me to defer to my comfort zone, finance, strategy, business development, and shy away from the areas that I'm less familiar with. And I've got to just pinch myself when that starts happening. I've got to do a better job at not avoiding those kind of gaps for myself, and figuring out how to fill them.
Yeah, it's such a thing. It's like, I got this friend of mine, Howard Mann. If he's listening, big shout out to Howard Mann. He's also a business turnaround specialist. So his company is called The Business Brickyard, and he wrote the book, equally the same name. And he put out this post not too long ago on LinkedIn, but it was basically, fuck your pride. That was his whole thing. And he was like, yo, like, to your point, like when the shit's hitting the fan, like you need help. You know what I mean? And so and so pride sometimes gets in the way of us asking for the help and therefore by extension accessing the resources, whether that's knowledge or skill set or capital or, whatever it might be, so that we can overcome the hill that's in front of us. So like, you're saying you just come, we're so close, we just, but right? Like just as the moment you get over that hill, there's another one, with a different type of challenge. And so, to your point, like asking for help, I don't know where it comes from. I think it actually comes from like some kind of weird societal thing, mainly in like this male patriarchy type thing where like men should not be ever seen as vulnerable. You know what I mean? Like you should always
Yeah,
know
exactly.
what to do because that's what success means. Like you didn't achieve the things that you achieved without asking for help, right? So, I mean, you did it all on your own. But I've learned that, I don't know how you feel about this, David, but I've learned that like vulnerability is not a weakness, it's a strength. And when you recognize that you're weak here or I need help there, sometimes, and Howard, I steal his saying, which is, he says, when you're stuck inside the bottle, you can't read the label because you're so
That's a good
associated.
one. I like that. Yeah, I like that.
I know, it's amazing, right? And so like you don't see things properly because you're so associated with it. So like when you're hurting, it's like when you're hurting, you don't see the things like the opportunity or the or the like you feel kind of hopeless in the situation. And so the what you're saying is, when you ask for help, someone will show the label to you and go, "Yo, here's the wine bottle. This is what you're actually drinking, dude. You think you're a red wine, but actually you're white." You know what I mean?
Well, and it's sort of, ironically, people also don't always think about it this way. It's very healthy to show your vulnerability,
Mm.
especially with your team, because and when you're going through the trenches and facing challenges, like the last thing somebody needs to hear is, "Oh, I have it all under control. Why don't you?" I mean, it's sort of been a good learning for me too. Is that when you kind of open up and really are just it's what it's almost what I said about the company. It's like know where you are, know where you're not, and be willing to face that head on. So I've had to force myself to do the same thing.
Mm. So, David, what are you struggling with now? Like, what's on your mind these days?
We've done so much work over the past several months that's been about rebuilding the foundation, strengthening the base. And that's been a colossal undertaking, and I think a tremendous achievement by our team to kind of put us where we are. But now it's like, how do we grow again? Right? There's a stabilization piece of a turnaround, then there's the liftoff piece, and I want to see us get to liftoff. And there are things that I can see that are really visible about what's going to get us there. But what I really what I'm worried about, or kind of really where I really want to spend my time, is like, what am I not seeing? What are the opportunities that could take us even further, and just think like way outside the box? We haven't really been able to do that. We've had to be
Mm.
super narrow in our focus right now. And the next thing is like, how do we put this company on afterburners again? And I'm okay with the crawl, walk, run thing, and we're done crawling, and now we're walking, and we all wanted to get back to running and sprinting, but I need to think beyond the horizon, not what's happening in the next 6 to 12 months. What do we need to build for beyond that?
Mm. Yep. And that equally is the next hill.
That is the next hill. That's right. That is the next hill.
You're gonna have to define how big that hill is, dude.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So I'm curious to ask you, David, what tools or resources do you use for success, quote unquote, on a daily basis? Do you meditate? Do you, like what tools or books, like whatever, like that other entrepreneurs that you feel could benefit from? Like what's in your kind of daily routine?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that I've really made a priority since taking over as CEO is trying to do something that I enjoy every day. And for me, that is, I love to play sports. I'm a pretty competitive person. I'm not a gym rat, so to speak, but I love to play tennis and squash and other kind of high intensity games. But I try to get out and do something or I cycle. You got to do something every day, and sometimes that it does mean getting up at 5 in the morning to be able to jump on our Peloton before our children wake up. But being active is one thing, and just carving out that time for myself. The second is I find great energy in my children.
Mm.
I try to get home when I'm not traveling every night to see them before they go to they go to sleep, and it just reinvigorates me. It takes my mind off of all the crap that I've been dealing with all day, and it's I'm very fortunate to have an incredibly supportive family, and my wife puts up with my being gone a lot. And I guess the third thing is I've and maybe if someone on my board listens to this, they won't love this, but I try really hard not to work on the weekends and
Mm.
to dedicate the week. And if that means, I put my kids to bed at 8 o'clock at night and I log back on and work till midnight on a Wednesday, and I do my very best to keep like the weekends clean, and we carve out time for my family and also for my wife Mackenzie, and being able to have a life outside of our children is important to both of us. So I found those three things to be really helpful in bringing balance.
Yeah. Yeah, I find balance is a really difficult thing to get right, and the only thing I find that really helps with get any kind of balance, because I don't actually believe in work-life balance. There's like, because it's a difficult thing to maintain, because everything, like, sometimes you just getting crushed and other times you like relatively chill. So it oscillates. But there's like work balance
Yes,
in
that's right. It's right.
in many cases, because like there's work at home and work, you know what I mean, at
In the
work.
office.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And your kids are about my kids' ages as well, aren't they?
that's right. There, ours are 4 and 6.
4 and 6. Yeah. So Frank's turning 8 in January, and Ray's turning 5 in April. So like we're at the same, sort of life stage, and I feel the same way. Like I get my spirits lift when I see them, because I'm like, oh shit, actually all the stuff that I think is so important, work wise, the moment I see them, I get the perspective that, hey, it's actually not everything.
It's not everything. That's right. That's right. But I mean, it forces you just to pull yourself back a little bit.
Yes, that's 100% correct.
And just, yeah, I mean, you're right. But I think your description's spot on. It's about balancing work, homework, and all those things. But I always struggle when I hear people say I never have any time for myself.
Oh, God.
And it is work to carve that time out. And yeah, like I said, sometimes it means early in the day or late at night. But believe me, there is time for yourself, and identifying that, and even if it's 15 minutes, I can't underscore how helpful it's been to me in just keeping my mind straight.
Yeah, I know. I sometimes my wife's like, I don't have time to exercise. Like, yo, I got up at 3:45 a.m. today. That's what I did today.
Hmm.
And I don't do that every day, but I made time, right? Because I was like, shit, I'm actually got a lot to get through today. And so, you don't find time, you make time. You know what I mean? Like there's cause and
That's
effect.
right.
Like you can't just be at effect. Oh, I don't have the time and everything's pulling me and I don't have time for this. Like, listen, if you don't have 15 minutes, you don't have a life. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
couple more questions and then we'll wrap up. Um, so I want to have a quick bit of fun with you, David, for a moment. So I'm going to give you the keys to the Matt Brown Show time machine and ask you to go back to like day one of Acutus Medical, right? And when you think about everything that you've been through, what advice would you give yourself about building this company or turning around this company? If you could go back to yourself on day one, like what would that advice be?
Yeah, I mean, it's something. It's funny. I always think about things like this because I always assess different job opportunity experiences I've had. Is knowing what I know now, if asked to do this again, how would I do it better or differently? Because we'd all like to believe that we're perfect A plus superstars, but there's always something to learn. It's really tempting, and it just when you have a lot of work to do, just to dive into your own echo chamber. And I'm going to do this myself. And this is a people oriented. Every business is people oriented, and nothing gets done without them. And I would say, I in this less so when I took over as CEO, more when I came in as CFO. If I ever do that again, I would have spent probably the first 60 days doing nothing but meeting the people in the company. Because especially when you come into like a CFO role, you're sort of your job is to be a little bit of bad cop, and it's okay. You need that balance, but say when you're told no by someone you have no idea who they are, or what their kind of motivations and priorities are, it's not especially effective. So I think that just shoulder to shoulder, uh, getting to know your colleagues and peers, and like when people sometimes think about that as like, well, that's not my job. Well, the reality is getting your job done is going to depend 1,000% on your ability to engage your peers. So making that upfront investment, I one of my goals when I took over as CEO is to meet with everyone in the company, either in person in a group setting, some live, some virtual, in the first 90 days of taking over the job. And I wouldn't have thought to do that had I not had kind of a rocky start as a CFO in terms of working with other people.
Yeah, it's a really good point. David, one more thing. We're heading into the end of the year. You're heading off to Switzerland. Going to take some R&R. I used to. I'm kind of teeing up the question here, but I don't believe in rest and recuperation. You know, like the typical. It works for like most other people, but entrepreneurs, visionary CEOs such as yourself. Like for me, the thing is like at the end of the year, because you're in this contemplative space, like you mentioned earlier, 2022, I was thinking about all this stuff. It's actually not R&R. Like you have to give it a new definition if you're a high performance executive. So my thing is it's rest and reflection. So like reflecting on the year, so you can take the learnings forward into the next year, or the whatever it is, insights and learnings and stuff like that. What's your advice to our audience around the world around how to treat this period of the year?
Yeah, so I love your description, by the way, because I think that's exactly right. And when I worked in investment banking, every August, the last 2 weeks of August, when I felt, and I somehow I'd always find myself at like my wit's end, and I would take these sort of 2 weeks just to pause, and I wouldn't be spent sitting on a beach though. It'd be thinking about what I want to do with the team going forward post Labor Day, and there was always a bit of sort of like business planning, but being able to do it on my own time made it not seem like a chore. So, this is a great time of year to spend time. I know it's cliche with friends and family, but kind of like do what you want. Yeah, we're going to be doing some skiing, but I think some of the days that our kids are in ski school, my wife's on the mountain, I'm going to be sitting by the fire with a book or my iPad or my laptop, probably a drink in hand, and thinking about the next year, the company, our priorities, and everything else. But this is a great chance to take yourself out of your office. Maybe it's in your house, maybe it's somewhere else, and just make you clear your calendar, make your own schedule. I know I'm going to be work on calls and working while I'm away, and I've never had a vacation where I haven't done that. But such a good opportunity just to disconnect your brain from your surroundings and put yourself in sort of a much more zen space, and do it on your own time, while getting to do something fun for yourself and your friends and family.
Yeah, have fun, people. Damn.
Yeah, that's right.
Give yourself a break. God, damn. Like we put
Yeah,
ourselves into so much I do. I got like my thing is like I'm so achievement driven. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I get it.
if I don't feel like I'm making progress, it drives me insane. Well, I should say I drive myself insane. So I've learned to like be kind to yourself. Like you don't have to build your empire today.
Totally. I will take that one too as a nice parting piece of advice, Matt. So thank you.
David, it's been a privilege having you here, buddy. You've done an amazing job. Really excited to see where you guys are going to go in the future. So, congrats and thank you for being here.
Thanks, man. Thanks for hosting me. I look forward to continuing dialogue with you.
Anytime. All right, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Take
Cheers
care.
for now. Bye.